I have traveled to the depths of my pain today, within my body, within my heart. And I understand, at least a little bit, why I have such deep pain avoidance patterns. Because my pain is absolutely terrifying. Now, on the other side of that pain is also a great joy, a great expansion, a great light, and a great liberation. Though I feel like even though I've touched the depth, I've only touched the surface. The thing is, being who I am and perceiving reality as I do, there isn't really such a thing as the particular separate from the universal. So as I've sauntered into the depths of the pains which I feel within myself, within my body, within my heart, within my soul, it feels like it's not just my pain that I've confronted. It feels like samsara itself. It feels like how to put this in a way that is not going to get me in trouble. It feels like there's a reason that prisons exist on this realm is because there's some fucked up energies swimming within our collective ancestry and ancestral embodiments. And every human being carries that kernel of distortion and ignorance and illusion and falsity and fallenness within ourselves. And so there's a way in which I witnessed kind of the kernel at the root of the ways in which I impose self-imprisoning behavior upon myself. I had something that wanted to come through. It has just disappeared. As human beings, we are multidimensional beings. We are not merely these bodies. We are not merely three-dimensional. We are not merely physical. We are made of spirit, and we are made of substances between physicality and ethereality and spirituality and soul. And this is not limited to our minds, to our souls, to our rational apparatus of perception. Our bodies contain these multidimensional layers within them, and they contain the memories of those layers within them as well. Not only that, but they contain them in a way that is far more deep, far deeper, and felt than the aerial, ethereal, mystical, dreamy experience, which is also accessible to some and all eventually. So that when it comes to talking about fallenness and presences of imbalances, lack of harmony, deceit, illusions, and the kernels that then weave these kinds of imbalances into physical appearance in reality, in something like prisons, in something like vices, in something like deluded and absolutely fucked up behavior. I am in such a magnificent place. Our bodies contain within our pain the recollections, the memories, the metaphysical imprints of the mythological layers of imbalance, of sin, of fallenness, of wickedness, of evil, of detachment from God. We contain the memories of that intelligence within ourselves. And now we each have our own versions of that ancient, primordial, archetypal embodiment. And we each have our own individual and ancestral memories of these things stored within our beings. We have our own little experiences from our own personal lives that relate to that universality. But as you zoom out and you begin to draw out the archetypal and thematic elements of these pains, of these memories, of these somatic forms of intelligence, they tell the universal human story of this primordial war between good and evil, of this primordial battle within ourselves between those parts of ourselves which seek wholeness and love and union with God, and all of those parts of ourselves which step away from that harmony and that innate freedom and that absolute truth of that which we ultimately truly are. It's really difficult to put all of this into words, but I'm trying. One thing that I witnessed within my being was the way in which certain traumatic points within this current lifetime that I currently embody, that I'm currently living, how those points themselves were like these core kernels of pain which I have stored within my body in a way that has gone unprocessed, in a way that is not fully felt and therefore still like stored within the body and suppressed. And I've also noticed the somatic layers of programming that has, by way of my mind and my mind's attempts at understanding my pain, to be like, what is this? Like, what do I do with this? I'm going to tell stories to try to like be like, okay, this must be it. This must make sense. So those kind of programmatic scripts and patterns of language, which have then become quasi-egregores of the consciousness of my mind and then scripted themselves into my body, it's like I feel the energetic layers that have buried themselves within my pain. I feel how my language being a spell, language being the breath, language being logos, how this has enmeshed itself within the pathos of my pain, within the passion of my pain, enmeshed itself, created a symbiotic relationship with it, and then birthed these little illusions within my body. Of layers of protection. Of linguistic explanations of the pain, of mythologizations of that pain, making the pain mythological. Mythologization of pain. All that is to say that all of that, like trying to explain my pain away, all of that trying to understand my pain mentally, all of that trying to tell stories about my pain and being entrapped in my mind's loops about that pain, have actually created constrictions around that pain within my being, which by way of somatic feeling and deep meditative breath and ritualistic prayerful invocation of that pain for the sake of its confrontation, I must then do the work of shedding the layers of the scripts which I have imposed upon my own pain in order to prevent me from feeling that pain, because that pain is so fucking terrifying. Why is the pain terrifying? Because that pain contains the hell which guards the gates of heaven within my body. That pain carries the universal human experience of all the ways in which we deceive ourselves. It carries the ageless ripples of all of the deceit of humanity and how that has piled up and piled up and piled up energetically into wickedness, into fallenness, into corruption. And then materialized, and might I even say metastasized, into something of a cancer, something of an imbalance that is lifeless, that is pure death, that is pure decay, that is pure unfelt pain. And this is not just a realm of organic substance. When we speak of angels and demons, this is a realm where demons dwell. Such that to confront my own pain is also a confrontation of hell itself and of the kinds of beings that thrive in hell, and of all the ways in which I have allowed hell into my being, all the ways in which my ancestors have collectively culminated all of their unfelt pains, all of their sins, and just offered them to me. Be like, here you go. And I'm not special in this. We all have these. Particularly those of us who have come to lift generational curses from our bloodlines. Now, within my pain, and within the universal pain to which that pain is attached, I also witness somatically within my being, and I feel it in a way that is very mystical and in a liminal space between the earthly experience of feeling and the heavenly experience of pure absolute mysticism. On the other side of that, pain is also who I most truly am. And the God-given power of my soul, and the potentiality which that contains, and the weight and responsibility that is then carried when one chooses to step into the actualization of that power. When you start to step into your power, you then face a tremendous amount of responsibility. There is far less room for tolerance of any self-deception or other deception. All other deception is rooted in self-deception. There is no longer any room for the avoidance of your pain, because other people are relying upon you to guide them out of their pain. So if you are still stuck in avoiding your pains or in drowning in your pain, then you're not going to be able to help people out of their pain. You're only going to project your pain onto them. Not only. But those who step into their power begin to lead and to guide, because they inspire. Naturally, they align themselves with the spire of God's breath, the respirations of God's breath. And from that inspiration, people are then attracted to it. So, given my awareness of my being a multidimensional being, I witnessed into the multidimensional depths of that, of who I am. And it's like it's like so far beyond the way that this material reality operates. And I'm speaking especially of Babylon and of, let us say, capitalism, and how people behave in these consumeristic ways. Like, the layers of our reality are so far beyond that. Like, the beings that live in this ocean over here, they are not just whales and dolphins and fish. They are so absolutely tapped in to an intergalactic, universal, interconnected breath of awareness and consciousness, and they are communicating telepathically and telepathically, as in from a place of empathy and heart-centered connection. And they're so deeply aware of one another, and they're so deeply rooted in care and universal love for one another, and they are so deeply tapped into the heavenly and hellish layers of reality, and likely a lot more heavenly layers than the hellish ones, though the hellish ones are some that we are imposing upon them. We human beings who still carry the seeds of our own inversions unintegrated within ourselves, our shadows unfaced, our pains unfelt. And we as human beings, as continuous embodiments of the primordial ancestry of being, which is the source of celestial consciousness within human culture. When we speak of astrology, when we speak of mythological language, when we speak of mystical experiences, when we speak of religion and the sources, the spiritual sources of religion, it is because there is an ideal, divinely connected human blueprint of consciousness that we each carry within ourselves that still carries the memory of our state of consciousness and awareness and perception before the fall, before the inversion, before the disconnection, before any illusions of hell tried to impose themselves upon our being. And quite frankly, when we live in a world of such deep conditioning and the Kali Yuga and universal experience of unfelt pain and unintegrated pain and wounds, all of these things have become extremely comfortable for us, so that when we go into our pains and we begin to feel into our actual true divine potential, the angelic essence of our being, which is truly the metaphysical essence of who we are, in face of the comforts and the patterns and the conditioning, witnessing that can be a whole lot of fucking fear. It's terrifying, because it's like, whoa, I kind of remember this, but I don't fully remember it, and that's a lot to take on. But then when you let the fear kind of settle, or at least when I let the fear settle and I just allowed myself to experience the full spectrum of it all, then I allow myself to shed the layers by feeling them. Shed the layers of conditioning. Shed the layers of unfelt pain, because now I've felt them. Shed the layers of ancestral trauma. Shed the layers of the mentally imprisoning scripted programs which I've imposed upon myself to avoid my pain. Shed the layers of the pain itself. Shed the layers of delusion and illusion and ego which have imposed themselves to constrict my soul. And simultaneously, I feel my soul enlivening itself. I feel my soul just subtly touching upon the surfaces of the constriction of that pain, and with infinite luminosity and divine breath, just choosing to expand and be like, oh, it's safe to just be who I am. Okay, I will just shine. And I will beam. And then I shed the layers and I shine, and I begin to allow the resurrection of my innate consciousness to settle back into my body and to replace all of the places in which conditioning and trauma responses and programming have been my baseline, have been the cornerstone, have been the pattern of my behavior. And I replace it. I feel the innate substance of my being just reclaiming that position within my embodiment. As if like okay, safety, reclamation, sovereign essence, luminosity, love, connection to God. And it's like there's still those moments of like, whoa, where the conditioning and the trauma imprints will try to maintain their grasp, their grip upon the behavioral, multidimensional neural network of our beings. But in this gradual process of just feeling all of it, feeling the depth of the darkness, feeling the depth of the evil, feeling the depth of the codes of inversion, and then feeling the depth of God, feeling the depth of your soul, feeling the depth of your power, feeling the depth of your light. In this process of somatic feeling and literally just feeling it, not intentionally doing anything with it, not trying to control, not trying to understand, literally just going into the absolute depths, dreamlike, multidimensional, and profound of your body's sacred intelligence. You do that, and then naturally, realignment begins to to rise back into place, to breathe back into place, to simply restore the innate purity of being, free of illusions, free of deceit, free of fear, and simply free. Freedom. This is day one of doing this, since receiving guidance from my higher self that like, yo, you gotta fucking face this pain. This is day one. And it was immediately revealed to me as I went into the meditation and came out of it. That's like, okay, this is a practice. And diving into this is a gradual process. And the layers shed over time. And the apotheosis and the unfurling of wings and the liberation happens over time. And the more you practice it, and the more I practice it, and the more we go into these depths and we feel from that deepest place of somatic innate intelligence, then slowly but surely, like a flower coming into bloom, like an entire forest coming into bloom, like places of the earth which have been deeply polluted, but then left untouched for nature to take over again, slowly but surely you see the vegetation reclaiming that plot of land. And it's just this seamless, organic coming into being. Simply saying, I am. I am. And I hereby reclaim this space as a space of peace, of divine connection, of freedom, of truth, and of being. The last thing I'll say, maybe. Thank you, God. Earlier, I think before I even got into this meditation, I went into nature. I went to the river by my place, and I prayed to the Great Mother. And within a few minutes, she communicated very clearly back to me to be like, you prayed, here I am. And I could just feel the forest. And I could just hear the birds singing. And I could hear the river streaming next to me. And it was as if all of those sounds and all of those breaths and all of that presence was interconnected in that moment and speaking to me directly, simply saying, wordlessly, silently, I am. You asked for me, you called upon me, here I am. So that's it. I pray these words were useful and helpful, not too convoluted, were something of an adequate translation of the depth of my experience, and that they weren't too mental, because I did feel a little bit stuck in my mind in the integration process of all of these deeply bodily experiences. I pray that they were felt, and I pray that I am able to share these words in the future, such words and transmissions about such journeys into my internal and microcosmic and universal depths in a way that can be helpful to any other human beings who are going through similar journeys, who are remembering how to tune into these inner depths in order to resurrect our souls, in order to reclaim our sovereignty, in order to essentially reconfigure reality away from the ways of falsity and darkness and deceit and towards a reunion with the divine. And ideally a civilization starting in communities that is more harmoniously and integrally oriented, heart-centered towards that divinity, and that prioritizes that divinity as within, so without, and that prioritizes freedom as within, so without, and that prioritizes the children, so that the children who like this is nothing compared to what the children who are coming into this world will have and already do have within themselves. Like, let us make space, create space for the children to do this work and for the children to be our teachers about this work, because if we allow them to be raised in ways that are disconnected from the conditioning and the programming and all of the falsity and bullshit and deceit. Like, their innate intelligence is just going to come online, and they're going to grow from that place. And so when we do this work within ourselves of shedding these layers, it's not merely for ourselves, it is for the children who exist now, it is for their children, and it is for a continuous evolution and amplification of this resurrection, of this reclamation, of this liberation, and of this divine embodiment of truth, which is happening as within, so without. It nevertheless begins within. So, my prayer is that these words can be helpful for any and all human beings and kin who might benefit from them in any way, heart-centered, divinely aligned, all for the sake of absolute truth, divinity, and freedom. Now, last thing, I pray that if these words were convoluted, if they didn't fully get the message across in a way that is fully embodied and useful, I pray to refine these offerings so that they may be received in a way that is more helpful, more useful, more healing, and of greater guidance. And I'm open to any reflections on improving upon the ways in which I pour these words out to you. How can this be better received? How can this be better communicated? Let me know. Especially if you've made it this far, like, it's because you care. So I really would appreciate any feedback. But I'll be I'll figure it out. But I want to be in service. So thank you all. Thank you, ocean. Thank you, ocean spirits. Thank you to the dolphins, the whales, and the fish. Thank you to the grains of sand beneath my feet. Thank you to the trees. Thank you to Costa Rica. Thank you to God. Thank you to Goddess. Thank you to the sky. Thank you to the clouds. Thank you to you. Thank you to my soul. Thank you to my pain. Thank you to universal souls. Thank you to universal pain. May all beings be free. May all beings be liberated. May all beings find God and truth from within. Whee!